another edition of Grown Folks Business. It's a beautiful Thursday.
Can I tell you, it's still, to Andre's point, Jay Dwayne's point, it's still so prevalent. And I know I'm tired. I can't imagine what you guys are like being in that skin and like, damned if you do, damned if you do.
And wholeness. I want to live a life without any lack. And that's my ultimate desire. And it's really about inventory, if you will.
Whatnot. And you get really busy and you get on a train track that just carries you through a number of years.
We shared with mom and family that, we won't be there. We won't be home every Christmas. With birthdays that we'll celebrate. We'll call, we'll celebrate, but it might not be on that day.
All right. Well, welcome to another edition, a special edition of Grown Folks Business here on a pretty nice Thursday evening. It didn't get too cold and didn't get too hot with all the strange weather we getting in the area. But I want to waste no time in introducing a dynamic young man that we're going to highlight tonight in our community partner segment of Grown Folks Business, Mr. Rashad Galloway. He's an author, and he's also the COO and co-founder of CliniSpan Health. His book is titled Make a Demand, a Marketing Approach to Activism. I know that sounds very, very interesting to me, and I'm looking forward to Mr. Rashad unpacking what he means by a marketing approach to activism. It's a fascinating way to phrase things around an activity that's generally thought of as physical. So you have a marketing approach that's going to be some thought and insight going into that. So I'm going to begin tonight with just the simplest of questions, I think, anyway. But you'll be amazed at how hard it is for people to talk about themselves. That issue as well. So, Rashad, tell us your origin story, because I'm a happy guy that we have an extra day of Black History Month. It's very important to me as a historian that we understand that our collective history is what matters. But at this moment, on the 29th, the unusual day we don't get very often, the 29th of February, we get to hear about you. So tell us at Grown Folks Business your origin story, where you come from.
Gotcha. Well, first, just want to say thank you so much for having me on. I've always enjoyed engaging with the Grown Folks Business podcast and just the informative conversations that you all have. But yeah, just to start, my name is Rashad. I am from Reidsville, North Carolina. Reidsville born and bred, as we like to say. I attended Reidsville High School, actually graduated in 2013. And from there, I attended UNC Chapel Hill. I'm in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, where I was a communication studies major and also was on a pre-dental track. Upon graduation, I actually went to dental school for a little bit, ran a couple businesses, tried a lot of things out, experimented a lot. But it all brought me back into ways that I could help my community, essentially. And that's what I feel like, even in the entrepreneurial realm, I gravitated to, which kind of speaks to, the two organizations that I'm a part of now. At CliniSpan Health, we work in, providing access and resources, primarily education, as well as access to studies related to clinical research. And so there I'm able to, help not even just members of my own community at home, but members of the, minority communities across the United States and across the world, as we create more equity in clinical research by our education, of course, and then also our inclusion in these trials. And so for me, it was huge because a lot of people don't even know how things, it's huge as clinical research affects us on such a micro level. And so when I was looking at it, I looked at my personal life and saw what was going on. So my mother and grandmother were both, they both suffered from hypertension. And so growing up, I would see my mom in particular change medications on, just about every visit basis, if not the dosage amount surrounding the medications that she was taking. And so from that, I started to realize, okay, there has to be something going on here. Something can't be right. There's no reason that, my mom should be cycling between medications and changing them. It's affecting the way that she, interacts on a daily basis. Sometimes, giving her debilitating health headaches where she can't even focus or carry out the work that she's working on. And so as I got into dental school and was just surveying what I wanted to do, and I knew I wanted to focus on the research side of things, I started looking more into it. And I realized that, number one, there weren't a lot of Black researchers carrying out the research, which in turn means that there aren't a lot of Black participants actually participating in the research. And how it hurts us is a lot of times people will have experiences like my mom had, where she's ending up changing dosage amount, changing medications, and sometimes experiencing the worst side effects of drugs. And a lot of times, ending up in a worse health state than she was prior to taking it. And so for me, in my role at Clinispan Health, dealing with, equity in healthcare, I feel like it's so important because it's an area that we've been historically left out from Henrietta Lacks, where, she had her immortal cells pretty much stolen and capitalized off of. And also, Tuskegee experiment, where, we've had a lot of miseducation, especially towards the Black community, which of course, that is our, the biggest issue really is the lack of trust. And so what I feel like I'm doing is helping to bring that trust back to our community, bring that trust in the healthcare system by educating people on the things that have been put in place to ensure that situations like those, never occur again. And then on the make a demand side of things, while a little bit different, still I would say a lot in the same areas. During my time in school, of course, I'll talk about it more in depth, I'm sure, as we go on, but I was involved in, protests and things of that nature surrounding some of the issues that we had been dealing with on campus. And so from there, for me, I saw that we had to begin to take new and innovative approaches to how we want to have change enacted in our communities. And for me, I saw social media and just digital marketing in general is a great way to do that, but because of my background in communication. So seeing the impact that I myself was able to have as an influencer marketer and helping to create change at UNC showed me that there was real legitimacy to the model that I had been using and the ways that I've been trying to carry out this change, make people aware, bring other groups together who don't know about the issue, and then of course, to create that change in the long run. So that's just a little bit about me. I love my hometown, and I say that my journey has been heavily impacted from my experiences in Reedsville, being in such a small town, where everybody knows each other. I'm sure if you go to anyone in Reedsville and you say the name Michael Galloway, who is my father, just about 99% of the people that you talk to will know exactly who he is, and from knowing him, know exactly who I am. So it's really been for me a community thing. And I was just glad I was recently able to come back and do a book signing at my high school. Just being able to see all of the community there and receive the support that I received was tremendous. And I'm always just greatly appreciative of it.
Man, that's beautiful. So just to kind of go in reverse slightly, because I think at the center of everything you're sharing is care. You have a genuine care. So nobody wakes up or is born with just this energy towards fair treatment or understanding when injustice is occurring and wanting to do something about it. So tell us a little bit about how you got to this point. What caused you to prioritize fair treatment, addressing health care disparities? I know your mother's involved in that, but when did you have a light bulb? What role did education play into this?
It played the honestly most important role. It was a huge role. And I would say for me personally, two different places where it kind of picked up. So initially, I would say it started when I was younger. My grandfather, Clarence Johnson, was actually the president of the NAACP my entire life growing up. And so from there, I began to see, the issues that our community dealt with on a large scale, not even on a large scale, really on a micro scale, to see it on a large scale, because, the things that are happening in small town of Reedsville are happening in small towns across the world. So that was, I would say, my first point of entry with, just seeing impact on the community and raising awareness surrounding issues that are, detrimental to some of the things that we had going on. And then, of course, trying to make sure that we create plans to put in place to help solve these issues. And then I would say the second most important place where it happened to me was actually when I was in college. So it's funny in the book, as I'm just telling the story about my experiences at UNC, in the first chapter, I talk about how I went on a monument tour on our campus. So this is during my summer bridge program, which is the summer before you actually enroll in school. So I was taking an introductory English class, and on the first day, they took us on a tour of the university and went around some of the buildings and monuments. And it's just funny that the first monument that we stopped by was Silent Sam, which many may not know it was a Confederate monument on UNC's campus that was dedicated in the early 1900s, really as a, mentally torture, students of color, and to show what the university really was standing for at those times. And so I had no idea about these things. As I walked by the first time, I'm pretty sure I wasn't even paying attention, if I'm being honest with you. I was a, freshman from Greensboro, North Carolina on UNC's campus, just, soaking everything in. But for me, as I got more and more into my college career, I would say more my sophomore, junior year, it started to click for me. It started with the protests that I would see on campus. So it's crazy as a 18, 19-year-old student going through campus, and you're at UNC Chapel Hill where you think everything is perfect, nothing is wrong, and you're walking through campus and you see protests going on, and I'm just sitting there wondering, like, what is this, what is going on? And this probably happened, I would say, 2 or 3 times, and then I would say on the 4th or 5th time I walked by and I actually saw a person that I knew in the protest. And so she actually had started school with me. Her name was Charity Lackey. She was a freshman at UNC, freshman class with me. And when I had a conversation with her the next day, I saw her. I was like, yeah, what was going on? What was it about? And she was just telling me about the statue and the history behind it. And immediately it made my mind click to my hometown of Greensboro, North Carolina, where, we had a Confederate monument sitting in our downtown, in the middle of downtown, the center, the focal point of our city, for just about my entire life, until that accident unfortunately happened, where it was knocked down. And then even at that point, there was a lot of fuss raised about where the statue was going to end up, where it was going to land, and so it just made me think back to my hometown and how I was in a completely different place but still experiencing the same things. And so from there, I started to educate myself more about what was going on, because these protests were happening on a daily basis. They actually they called them the Silent Sam sit-ins. And so they would be at Silent Sam all day from 9 to 5. There would be people there protesting for its removal, of course, because it didn't stand with, what our campus stood for. So fast forward, I would say the end of my, or at the beginning of the year after I graduated, students actually had a protest where they pulled the statue down. And so, similar to the fuss that was raised in Reedsville, the same fuss was being raised in Chapel Hill about, oh, what's going to happen to the statue? Is it going to go back up in its place? How are donors going to feel about this? How does the UNC community feel about this? And so there was a lot of conversations going on. Of course, as you know, nobody wanted that statue to go back up where it was, just because of what it stood for, and just what it was telling to people who were coming on our campus to come to the main quad and see this big statue that was put up and erected to support those, or to give honor to those who, fought in the Confederacy, which in my mind is a vow to fight for slavery and, the enslavement of people of color. And for me, that's just something that I could not stand for. And that, just being raised how I was raised, I know it's completely wrong, regardless of, who it's being done to or what's happening, regardless of race and all of those factors. Things like that just shouldn't happen. And so going forward, after it was pulled down, I continued to see protests on campus. And so one of the protests that I came across again, and my friend who I mentioned previously was also at, was another one to get the building names changed on campus. One in particular was for William Saunders. It was Saunders Hall. And many people don't know that William Saunders was actually one of the leaders of the KKK in North Carolina. So to be on campus at UNC Chapel Hill as a Black student and to walk into a building named after a KKK founder or member, leader, is an embarrassment, if I'm being honest. It's an embarrassment. I've just had so many conversations with, people who, go to historically Black universities, like, how could you even put up with this? And a lot of times I tell them it was because I didn't know. I had no idea about these things going on at the time. It's not something that's, highly publicized. Of course not, because, they don't want people to know these things. They don't want us to be, educated and have a full understanding, because our ignorance is, for them, how they can take advantage of it and manipulate the stories and change how things are framed. And so for me, upon, learning these things, having this education, I was like, okay, we have to do something about this. So started going to some of the protests with, some of my friends, and the University of UNC Chapel Hill, they actually decided to change the name of that one building. And so after they changed the name of that building, they actually put in a 16-year moratorium to stop the renaming of any of our other buildings on campus. And so, as you can see, it was a huge slap in the face because, we didn't have one building named after, KK founder. We had 30 plus buildings, monuments, and landscapes that were named after people who either fought for the Confederacy, were white supremacists, or, were slave owners. And so it was a huge slap in the face to see the university do something like that. And of course, as you know, protests continue. We continue to see nothing change. The statue came down. And it was almost as if, the statue coming down was almost a trade-off for the 16-year moratorium that they didn't put in place. Like, yeah, we let the statue stay off campus. We changed the name of that building. Y'all should be satisfied. We're putting in the 16-year moratorium. Just be quiet and continue on as you have been continuing on before. And so, again, at this point, I had graduated. And so I had the fortunate opportunity to be brought back on campus as an entrepreneurship coach for the UNC entrepreneurship department. And so when I came back, I continued to see the same things: students protesting on campus, upper level administration not really paying attention to anything that they had going on or fielding any of their concerns. And it was at that point that I really knew that we had to do something to affect real change. And from my perspective, I knew that in order to be able to create the buzz that we needed to create to force the hand of the UNC Board of Trustees, we had to do it in a digital way. Just because through my studies and through my my role as a consultant, running my own consulting agency, I knew the power that social media held. And people always say that, like, publicity is publicity. You have good publicity and you have bad publicity. And so for me, I was like, I know that if there's enough bad publicity surrounding this subject, the university has to pay attention to it, number one. And number two, if the uproar is loud enough, they'll be forced to change it just to, save face, essentially. So from that, I was like, you know what? I was just angry. I honestly acted out of anger, if I'm being 100%. And I went on Facebook and I added the university, tagged them in a post. And I was like, UNC Chapel Hill, you must change the 30 plus buildings, monuments, and landscapes that we have on our campus that are named after these white supremacists, slave owners, and, members of the Confederacy, because they don't support the things that we say that we support on campus, and they don't stand for the ideals that we are saying we stand for. And so from there, posted across all my platforms, and in a matter of like 24 hours, I had messages, comments, engagements across all platforms, thousands of them, from people that I knew in school all the way up to, ex-UNC athletes, ex-UNC basketball athletes messaging me like, okay, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And so initially, I had no idea. Just being frank, I had no idea of exactly what I wanted to do. I knew that I had to use a digital strategy to go about whatever change I was trying to create, but I didn't know exactly what the strategy was. And so just started to do a little research that next day, because I knew that I had to do something just based off of the buzz that just that simple post had gotten. And so I went online and saw that there had actually been a petition for this issue before, but the petition was only, it was limited to UNC students and UNC faculty. And so I knew immediately that if I created a petition and made the target audience a little bit broader, so focusing on, not just UNC, not just North Carolina, but the entire United States, that I could potentially get enough buzz and generate enough awareness to be able to affect the change that I wanted to affect. And so from there, it was pretty much the next day I spent drafting up the petition, ended up going on change.org, putting it in, submitted it, and then going to my social media pages and trying to promote it. And in a matter of 24 hours, it had garnered over 10,000 signatures. And in a matter of 2 days, it had garnered over 13,000. So with that, huge display of support. And also on the post, I forgot to mention this, which was a super important part. On the post that I posted about the petition, I actually told the people who followed me and people who were engaging with the post to tag specific pages in it, one being UNC, of course, and then also the major news outlets. So the Chapel Hill major news outlet, which was the Daily Tar Heel, and then, of course, your CNN, your Fox News, your NBCs. And so in amazement to myself, like it was, thousands of comments with people tagging these news groups in them. And so in my head, I knew that, this was something that the university was going to see, and also too, something that the university was going to have to pay attention to. And so that next day, UNC Board of Trustees actually decided to call an impromptu meeting where they discussed the issue. And I had heard about this impromptu meeting actually from the student body president, who was a member of the Board of Trustees at that time in the student position. And so in that meeting, he actually mentioned my petition to the Board of Trustees, which I'm sure many of them had already seen, because I had actually, the day before they called the impromptu meeting, I had already had a conversation with one of the Board of Trustee members, who I will leave unnamed at this point, about the issue that was going on and about, the petition and everything that was happening. And so out of that closed session, they came into an open session. And in that open session, they decided to rescind the moratorium and begin drafting the guidelines for the renaming processes for the buildings. And so that, for me, just showed the power of collectivism. It showed me the power of digital marketing, the power of social media, and the power that we all individually hold to hold our people and representatives who, are controlling these systems that control us accountable for their actions. So it was a huge moment for me. And from that, I knew that, it would be selfish of me to hold the information and the process that I used to create that change to myself. And I knew that immediately, because after the rescinding of the moratorium, I had activists from universities across the country messaging me like, can you support me? Like, what is the best way for me to go about, affecting change? What are some tactics I can use? Can you, repost this on your page for me? And of course, I'm doing all of these things. And also just trying to inform them as best as possible, which thankfully led to over 100 buildings across the country being changed within a matter of a month or two. So that was, from my perspective, huge. And from there, I knew that this was something that I had to put in text and put in writing, so that other activists know that there are ways to create change. And they're, not saying that this is a one-size-fits-all method. Of course, we have to get out there and protest. We have to show awareness. We have to have our faces out there. But we also have to have marketing strategies that allow us to effectively curate education for our community, and then also to provide them with the proper tools and resources to be able to create the change that they want to see. Yep.
Awesome, man. Look, you gave me a whole bunch of things I want to actually as we correspond about this, because I remember when all of that was taking place. And one of my buddies who went to UNC, and the CEO of NC 100, Merrill, also went to UNC. I remember him telling me the communications he was receiving about the things that you were initiating. And it is amazing that you get that much response and that much outreach, and you managed it. And now you have a better understanding of how to actually tell people your methods. And that's a beautiful thing, man. I can't commend you enough. I used to actually work in the library on Wilson Library, so I walked past that empty pedestal, quite a bit.
You know exactly where it is. Yep.
And I remember it being there when I visited when I was younger. So I do. Right. I appreciate and commend that type of power. And it was around the same time, if you recall, a young lady in Durham was responsible with leading the pulling down of Raleigh, actually downtown Raleigh,
the Confederate flag.
Yeah, but she went to my alma mater, Central. So yeah, man, I think that's how change happens. Sometimes it's not just somebody in the office signing something. Sometimes it's out and it's in public and it's loud and proud. And then sometimes it happens because someone gets creative, like you did, and creates a synergy and an energy that no one's seen before. So thinking about everything that you've participated in, I often say, you never know until you do. And sometimes I'm really meaning do something. So you've done a lot, but what are your primary takeaways, and how do they support your life's purpose? Because we're getting to the point of really delving into the book and delving more into your work in healthcare, but that's got to be purposeful work, in your opinion, correct? So
100%.
Yeah, so this is your life purpose. What are these takeaways that you've gotten from the things you've done?
Yeah, so I would say one of the biggest takeaways I've gotten from the things that I've done is that you have to be courageous. That's honestly number one. As I was, drafting the post that I posted on social media, I, thought about several things. As somebody who was about to apply to dental school, I thought about my chances of, getting a UNC dental school or just dental school in general being sabotaged because of, trying to do the work that I felt was the right work to be doing. But I had to put that fear aside and be courageous and understand that sometimes somebody has to be a martyr. Somebody has to be a martyr because if no one decides to, take the chance and be that martyr, things will remain the same and no change will happen. So for me, I would say that was one of the biggest things is being courageous. And then also, I would say the second thing that I learned from it was just the power of collectivism. When you can get a whole community on board surrounding, any issue, the change that you want to create for that issue will happen. Just based off the fact that, there's power in numbers. It says in the Bible that three-pronged cord can't be unstrung. Paraphrasing, of course, but I feel like that's really true when it relates to trying to create change for your community. The more people that you have on your side, the more people that you have fighting for the issue relentlessly without, fear of, how they can be sabotaged or the things that could happen. That's where you truly see true and real change created. And it takes that sort of, power to really affect the systems that we're talking about, because, we're talking about systems that are number one, are huge and are, have been in control for, hundreds of years. And then on top of that, systems that we've been left out of, most importantly, for, the majority of those time periods. For instance, at UNC, when I was doing, the things that I was doing there, they only had one African-American on the board of trustees and only one woman on the board of trustees. So in my mind, the issues that we were having and the rulings that we're making were were directly correlated to the lack of diversity that I saw not only at the university but also at those higher up levels. So it also emphasized the importance to me of making sure that we get the right people in positions of power who are making these decisions, and outside of that, making sure that whoever are in those positions, that we truly hold them accountable, that we pull out the receipts, all the things that they are saying that they're going to do or saying that they're planning on doing in the community. We need to be fact checking them 24/7 to make sure that, these things are actually happening. And even outside of, the board of trustees and politics and things like that, even to, policing. A lot of people don't know that at several of the Confederate rallies that we had on our campus, in support of Silent Sam being, replaced and remaining where it was standing, the police officers that, University Police and Chapel Hill Police Department were there, protecting the Confederate supporters and not even protecting the students who were, paying to be on the campus that, we're protesting for the statue to be removed from. And we have these people who, no disrespect, were complete outsiders coming to a place that we're paying to call home to, pretty much continue to spew the same rhetoric that had been spewed on that campus for the past, 100, 200 years. So for me, it's even systems like that. Many people don't know that the police department there had a special agent essentially go undercover to join the protest to figure out, what people were doing, what people were saying. And one of my friends who was a part of one of those protests actually saw the police officer in his police clothing at one of the rallies and went up to him and pulled her phone out and was asking him like, yeah, what were you doing? Why were you doing that? And his response was that I wasn't on the clock, or I wasn't in police clothing, which, is ridiculous, number one. But also, in my mind, it showed us the power. It showed me the power that we really hold. Because, if they didn't think we were capable of creating the change that we were setting out to change, they would have no reason to feel like they should need to infiltrate us. So, yeah, those are I would say, two of the biggest things I learned throughout this process is being courageous, having no fear, and then collectivism, just making sure that, you're making everyone aware as you possibly can and involving everyone at the level that they want to be involved with. But yep,
Nah, awesome, man. So I have to ask, you mentioned your grandfather earlier. So who do you credit with instilling principles and the courageousness that you just shared as being guiding forces for you? Who would you give some credit to?
Yeah, definitely. My grandfather would be, I would say, number one on that list, and my father as well. Just my family in general. My grandfather also was a pastor at Elm Grove Baptist Church for he just retired. I would say like 5 or 6 years ago. Was there for 30 plus years. My dad is also a pastor too, so I grew up in the church. They instilled in me the values of what we're supposed to do, not only as human beings to each other, but also in God's light, most importantly. And for me, it all goes back to those things that I learned then. I kind of look at it from the situation of Jesus. When you think about it, right? Jesus was not the first activist, but one of the first activists. You know what I mean? So he had no fear. He was able to gain collectivism through the disciples, and then also just speaking and teaching. And so those were some of the things that I tried to take in my personal walk, to help show other people what the things that we should be doing, the way that we should be living, the things that we should be supporting, and most importantly the things that we should not be supporting. And of course, seeing his work in the NAACP, he grew up in the Jim Crow era. It was fascinating. In that same class that I spoke about earlier, that same English class, we actually did a project where it was for the Southern Oral History Project, which I'm sure you probably heard about before. And so I was actually tasked with doing an interview, and I actually did an interview with my grandfather, and it was about the Greensboro Massacre, which he was in Greensboro resident and pastor in Greensboro at the time that this occurred. And so for me, it touched at like how close these things are to you. Like, my grandfather, thank God has given him a long life, but I'm able to, have conversation with him about, racist killing Black people, you know what I mean? And him being alive and around when these things are happening. And so for me, it just shows that, like, yes, we have created a significant amount of change from those times, but still we have an extremely long way to go, to ensure that things like that never happen again. And then, of course, it's transition, I would say, from overt signs of racism where it's, people calling you the N-word to your face, or, telling you you're not getting a job because you're Black, or, you can't work here, we don't accept Black workers, and things like that, to being more systemic, where now, Black people, we can't go get home loans, we can't get credit from the banks and things like that. And they systematized it in a way where it's they can't be blamed, essentially. And so from my perspective, I believe in attacking those issues from all of those ways. And that's honestly one of the reasons I decided to put out that petition, because it was like, these systems that, are quote unquote in control of us, we have to realize that the power lies within us. We are the ones that control them. We are the ones that put these people in place. We can dismantle these systems if we see fit. We just have to have the courage and faith and believe in ourselves and believe in God that we are, we are in his calling and doing the right things that, he has pushed us to be and do in our lives to help make the world a better place. That's really what it's about for me, and end all be all is just making the world a better place than it was, while I was here, when I leave. So those are some of the, big pullers for me. Definitely God and my family, for sure.
Absolutely, man. So I don't even have to ask you the faith question. You've shared that, and that's critically important. I can see to your journey. So Reverend Nelson Johnson. I'm from Greensboro, and
I see.
The Greensboro Massacre took place. Man, we used to hang out over there when I was growing up.
Wow.
Of course, this was after the massacre, but man, maybe half a mile, 2 miles from where I live, somewhere in that range, and that history was hidden. Much like you say, there's these moments that occur that are often just glossed over. And as a historian, I'm tasked with, kind of going back and looking at them and contextualize them better so that we can learn from them collectively. I don't have it in my mind that everybody's born with a certain disposition. I think there's conditioning that occurs. And when you leave certain things out, you allow for that conditioning to be emboldened and more solidified. And we can do something about that. And I'm glad to see that you are. So tell us about your book, man. what made that a thing that you felt like you had to do besides being of service? I get the part where you say you had to tell people what you did and how it could be effective in their neck of the woods, but what makes you say, hey, I can do that, I can put this stuff on paper?
Yeah, man, honestly, it started with one of my friends, my partner actually with Clinic Span Health. I was talking to him. His name is Desmond Daniel. I was just talking to him about, what I was doing. And for me, I'm the type of person, I really I dumb down personal accomplishments. I'll just put it that way, where, I saw what I did as important and I knew how important it was to the community and UNC community. But, I didn't see myself as like the leader of the pack, or the guy who was, spurring all the change. And he made me look at it differently in a way that, like, what I did was really creating history. It was really changing the framework of how people who go to our university from then on out will experience what they're experiencing. And specifically to, the issue of the name changing, that just means that, people who look like me won't have to walk into buildings named after people who enslaved them. And so just having that small, change was a huge moment of history, because it showed, outside of the fact that, the names were wrong and the name should have been changed, years ago. It showed that, again, the power of collectivism, the power that we had as a university. And then also, from those conversations that I was having with him, he was just telling me like how big it was and how important he felt that it was that other people know about, what I was doing and how I did it. And by being such an important piece of history, how it should definitely be documented. And so, after, fielding his concerns and thinking about it for a couple of months, because personally, and my English teacher, Mr. Knight, I know he's going to watch this. He's always been an avid supporter of me since I've, played tennis for him in high school, and he was my English teacher. But he'll tell you himself that I hated English in high school. It was my least favorite subject. I hated reading. I hated writing. I could do it at a high level, but I did not enjoy it at all. And so for me, the thought of even writing a book, it was more of a initially like, oh, I'll have written a book, not like me actually writing the book. So once I got over, that aspect of it, I realized like this is definitely something that I have to document. And I realized that it was also important for people to understand the history of it, just like you were talking about. A lot of people don't understand the history of, what went on at UNC. And so in the book, I actually detailed, super acutely the individuals who a lot of these buildings were named after, the history behind them, what they did, clearly outlining and showing why these people, are not, good representatives of the university and things of that nature. And so that was really what I would say it was. It was me realizing that this was a story that people needed to know. Also, I'd say a huge part of it for me was, growing up, I didn't know many Black authors. I didn't see many, African Americans putting out books, coming from Reedsville. What they usually say, Reedsville, and I hate to say this, is a death trap, especially for men of color who are from the communities that we're from. There aren't, many paths of life out of that in the city that you can get into. And so for me, I knew that I also wanted to be a role model for the next generation of kids in Reedsville, to show them that, you can be more than an athlete. And even for myself, many people don't know, when I went to UNC, it wasn't really for me an educational decision. I was a basketball player in school, and I was one of those guys, like super high confidence guys, like, and I in my head knew that if I went to UNC, I can make the basketball team. And thankfully, God had other plans for me. My freshman year, I actually broke my ankle, and so it forced me to, go back on the educational path and focus on just making sure that I thought of things outside of sports and, figured out life outside of that. Because even then, in those pathways, a lot of times, the athlete life, it lasts for 5 to 10 years, and then you're back into the regular world, hoping that you made enough money and saved enough to, survive. And so for me, it was about being a part of something where I could show longevity and just, showing other kids that they can be authors too. You can write your own book. You can write a kid's book. And for me, I think one of the things going forward is, just being able to provide more resources for the community. I recently went back and did a giveaway to the Reedsville basketball operations, because it was just so impactful for me. That's really where I learned true leadership and true collectivism, the things that I'm talking to you about. Being the captain of the basketball team and being a team MVP is really where I learned those leadership qualities and skills and how to rally the troops and, get everybody on the same page. And so for me, it's about being able to, the outside of the book itself, educating people, showing people the framework to be able to create the change they want to see. I just wanted to inspire people to do the things that they don't necessarily believe they can do in the moment. There were several people told me, you'll never get into UNC, you'll never be this, you'll never be that, you'll never run your own business, you'll never be a millionaire, these things. And so for me, it's all about beating those stigmas and stereotypes and also encouraging our community, because we're getting hit with these things every day. I literally saw a story the other day. One of my friends, his name is Michael Bonner, who also I should shout out. He is also an author and he is a professor at the KIP. I want to say it's KIP Academy in Atlanta, if I'm not mistaken. But in his story, he was a basketball player, went to Winston-Salem State. And he was saying that his teachers always told him he would never amount to anything. His teachers always told him that he'd never, make college basketball team. He'd never be good enough. And so these are things that our, kids, people from our community are experiencing on a daily basis, starting, in pre-K, elementary school. These microaggressions and systemic ways of thinking are things that are being forced on them at such a young age that, how it is. You're super impressionable when you're young. And so those things can really conform your mind and affect the way that you think going forward. And so for me, it's just about being a role model, showing people that you can achieve anything that you put your mind to. And as long as you put God first, he will make sure that all the rest of the cards fall where they're supposed to fall. Yep.
Absolutely. So, I'm a big proponent of making sure you surround yourself with good people, because if you got friends and people around you telling you being that negative, you don't need to be around them. And I also am emphatic, and you probably remember Miss Portia Parrish, near dear.
100%.
Yeah, she used to say all roads lead back to Reedsville, and here I am speaking to you. So one of the things I used to always say to young people, and I'm sure that this is in part of what you deliver as well, you belong anywhere. Be there and be present and be your whole self. I have a question for you that's I hope is thought-provoking, but I also want to let people know that are watching, if you have anything that you want to ask, feel free to put it in the chat and we'll get to it. But we're coming up on time. But Rashad, my question is, how do you reconcile the fact that the place that nurtured you also is responsible for your activism? Because you don't get to where you are without UNC, even as problematic and as dire as the things that it was putting out there and for the world to see and trying to justify at points. You don't get you as you are now without that experience. So how do you reconcile that?
Sometimes it can be hard to reconcile, just being honest with you. Like, as I was writing a book and just researching more about the history of even Reedsville, my hometown, learning about where the name came from, the Reed family, which many people don't know was a slave owning family. And that, Governor David S. Reed, he was a slave owner. He was also part of, the legislature. He was a segregationist. He wasn't a part of the Confederacy, but he did own slaves and did think that segregation by race was of those best things. And so learning those things as, a kid who wore Reedsville, North Carolina on his chest from, since I could run until I graduated high school, it was hurtful. Honestly, it hurt me. And I think that hurt was really what spurred me into action. Because it was just so representative of, what the city was for people that looked like me. Like, once I learned the story, it made so much sense. Of course, the city is named after a slave owning family. Of course, all of the Black people in Reedsville live in the same area. You know what I mean? Of course, there weren't many Black businesses in the business areas in Reedsville, and many Black businesses at all. It all started to make sense. It all started to make sense of why things the way that they were. And so for me, like you said, my reconciliation with it was really, for me, I knew that I had to live a life that could show people from where I'm from that we could change what it means to be Black and from Reedsville, and even further, what it meant to be Black from Black student at UNC Chapel Hill. And I felt like the best way to go about doing that was showing them that we can truly change the stuff that we say we want to change. We don't have to just say, oh, I wish it was like this, or oh, I wish it was this way, or I wish I could change this. I wish this person wasn't doing this or wasn't in this position. We can truly affect the change that we want to see. We just have to show the initiative and be able to be in a place where we can get everyone on the same page. Those are really, really the most important parts.
Yeah, I'm definitely impressed, man, especially by you understanding the important role of our nation's history and why certain things persist,
Right.
why certain things have been implemented into the structure of this nation and been detrimental to certain groups of people. So I'm actually working on a paper concerning Black masculinity. I've got to submit it because I have to present it pretty soon. But I want to ask you what your thoughts are on that as a construct. It's something that I know you can see in history, but I know it becomes problematized when you place Black in front of when masculinity exists on its own and you are purely thinking about the merits of masculinity. When you attach Black masculinity to it, it becomes a bit problematized. And that is, I think, because of what's baked into America and how Black men are viewed and opportunities or the lack of opportunities that exist for a lot of Black American men. So do you have any ideas or thoughts? Has masculinity or Black masculinity played any role in how you've approached any of these things? Because I know part of it is being somewhat manly in your approach and just knowing that you have to show that you have strength and vigor in what you're doing and what you're embarking upon. I know that's a big piece of it. So is there any way that you can interject any ideas around Black masculinity?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, for me, I think African American men, we're been over masculinized, if that's even a word. If you get where I'm going, in a way that, you know, we are taught not to have feelings. We're taught not to feel anything. We're taught not to express those feelings, and we're in a way that we've almost been forced to be hardened. And again, like you said, this stuff all comes from history, where, you know, we weren't allowed to be masculine, you know, because we had masters. You know what I mean? And so all of those things have been things that I feel like through history have been suppressed. And then, of course, we've transitioned through time, those systemic ways of thinking have still never left, if I'm being honest, where people see a person like myself or a person like yourself who, you know, cares about issues and are very passionate about them, speaking about them passionately, and they take it in a way that is almost destructive. And we're almost painted as if, you know, we're the enemy, we're the evil ones, when in reality, we're just, you know, fighting the issues that have been holding communities like ours back for, you know, hundreds of years. So from my perspective, as it relates to just Black masculinity, I think there needs to be a reframing of it. And I think it's something that not only has to be unlearned, but retaught, if you get where I'm going, where we have to unlearn the previous ways of thinking that, you know, we can't display emotion. We have to be hardened. You know, when someone disrespects us, we punching them in the face, you know, because things like that are things that have been, you know, forced on us, impressed upon us by people who don't even look like us, and for reasons that don't even help or support our own communities. And so from my perspective, I think there has to be a reframing of it where we're showing Black boys it's okay to show emotions. You can cry if, you know, those are normal emotions. And we're, you know, we wonder why, you know, Black men are experiencing mental health issues at such a high rate. It's because of the things that we're talking about now, the ways, the systems, the ways of thinking that, you know, we've been forced under for hundreds of years that are now, you know, coming out in ways that are negative. And on top of that, ways that in most cases, you know, just talking about the healthcare thing for a while, in ways that we can't even change because we can't get access to the proper resources to actually affect the change and, you know, get the help that we need to get help for. So, yeah, those are just a few of my thoughts on it.
I don't know. Appreciate them, man. It's a vicious circle. I think the time frame is indicative of how we get here. And that's what I'm looking at in my paper, kind of like right after slavery and into the earlier 20th century, Jim Crow era and things of that nature. But you're right. There's almost a big gray space of how we go from a potential of a healthy masculinity or understanding of providing and protecting to one that becomes volatile and emotional in ways that are detrimental to us being perceived, our humanity being perceived by society.
Right.
Man, great answer. I wouldn't have asked that question if I didn't think you could handle it. Now I'm very, very impressed with the answer. I really appreciate it. So I'm going to actually give you the floor for a couple of minutes to say what you want to say to get us out of here. But I want to just, thank you for your time. Greatly appreciate you spending time with us on Grown Folks Business. But what's next for you? What's coming up? What's down the road? What's the future look like for you, Mr. Galloway?
Yep. So a couple of things. One, I am planning on releasing another book actually that is just more generic to marketing specifically, because one of my things as an entrepreneur, which I'm extremely passionate about, just because I realize the importance of having Black business and how that can really fuel our community and the issues and things that we care about. And so during my time in between school and dental school, I actually ran my own consulting agency where I worked with a lot of small Black businesses to provide marketing education and then also be a resource for them to be able to, run marketing campaigns and figure out, what was the best marketing mix for their organizations. And I realized that is information that is hard to come by a lot of times, and that it's hard to come by from people that look like us. And so from this, one of the next things that I'm in the process of doing is writing a book surrounding just general marketing principles that any small business owner, small, medium, large size business owner can follow, that I think will be able to effectively help them grow their organizations and then also brand themselves in a positive light. So that is one of the things that I'm working on. And then also just trying to get the book in as many hands as possible. I'm actually going to be donating a couple copies to my high school, which I'm super excited to be able to do. For me, it's never been about selling books. It's always about the education that is in there that I think can really help to affect change. The specific piece is, for me, I think that it was the most helpful and the most impactful for people will be the 5-step the funnel of activism, which is my coin term for the 5-step process that I use to help create change. It first consists of the title of the book, which is to make a demand. Next is to raise awareness, leverage the moment, join forces, and then 5, of course, is to have a call to action to help create those changes. And so if I'm leaving people with anything, I want to leave them with those 5 things. If you're, trying to start a campaign or looking to create change in your community around the issues that you care about, first, make sure that you are making demands. You're not asking people for things. You're telling them what you want. Make sure that you are raising awareness and you're doing it through multiple channels, not just word of mouth, not just flyers, but you're on social media. You're sending emails out, just hitting people on all the platforms that they're on. Leverage the moment. I think that was huge for me. Based off the things that were happening during the time that you kind of spoke about with the alumni of your university pulling down the flag in Raleigh. Also, the numerous police shootings that were occurring at the time, Breonna Taylor, and all of those things, leveraging those moments that those issues create to then create further change, because it gives you an immediate platform to be able to have your voice heard. The 4th one, of course, joining forces. So joining forces with as many organizations as possible. And then also in joining forces, it's mutually reciprocal, because not only are you getting people to support your issues, now you can support their issues, and we are giving all of our issues now a bigger platform and to get more eyes on it, to hopefully enact the change that we want. And then the last thing, of course, having a call to action. In my campaign, it was in a couple of places, getting people to tag the people that in the post, getting people to repost it and share it, all the way up to getting people to sign a petition. And to, even people in the community helping to get articles out and things of that nature about what's going on, just to get it in front of the faces that you want to get it on. So those are the 5 things that I would want to leave. And then last but not least, the last thing I want to say is a quote from Frederick Douglass that I feel just sums up what I'm doing and how I'm doing it the best way. And that is that power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will.
Man, I hate to even step on that, but you giving me a call to action, and that's the follow-up. I'm following up with you, and I'm going to be in touch, and I look forward to collaborating on something in the near future, Rashad.
We 100% have to. We have
Absolutely, man. This has been great. Meryl snuck in the back door. Come on in, man.
I also wanted to just lift up that Rashad is one of the folks we hired his firm to help us update our website. So you see that entrepreneur side, and he's just been like a bright shining example. And I see Miss Rochelle here from NAACP. I'll bring her for a second too, but just I don't know if she want to give you any flowers. But Rashad has been super active in supporting the NAACP, and has just been an amazing champion for folks here in Reidsville to kind of look at. And he's part of that generation that we need to bring up to, lift up our community. So just so happy that he was able to join us tonight.
Thank you, Meryl. I appreciate you. I really do. I think the community in general, like, y'all don't understand, without y'all support in what I'm doing, I definitely would not be where I am. And if it wasn't for, me seeing people like yourself, Meryl, as business owners, helping not only yourself, but helping the community, trying to get funds in our community's hands and create programs that enhance our community and provide access to resources. And then, of course, Miss Tucker, it goes without stating the work that she's done for our community. Another UNC grad. I had to throw that out there. Go Heels. Go Heels. But the work that she's been doing side by side with my grandfather in the community for years. And still doing to this day. She actually texted me earlier today. So the work that the thing I've learned from her is that the work truly never stops. It doesn't stop until we stop. And so I appreciate both of y'all.
That's right. Bless you. Bless you. Wonderful.
Good to see you, Miss Tucker.
All right. Good to see you guys. I was late getting on, but I just had to see my little son.
There you go. It's recorded here, so you can see, you can watch him later, and you can see where you pick up where you left off, or pick up where you jumped on. Listen,
absolutely.
There's something to giving people their flowers. And Rashad, you just did that, but there's also something to people growing up flowers, and it sounds like that's what they did with you, man. They got something that they're proud of. Somebody out there who's doing things that have a reflection that immediately highlights how important you are to that community, man. So greatly appreciate you, man. Again, I'll be in touch soon. We have a lot to talk about, Rashad, and I greatly look forward to it. Thank you so much. Everyone out there, have a wonderful night. You've gotten a lot of love in the chat, man. So have a wonderful night. Appreciate it.
Thank you to everybody. Thank you so much, Felton. This is amazing.
Absolutely, man. Everybody have a wonderful evening. Take care. Be well.
Take care.